Okay, I think we are live. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, let's get into the screen share here. Switch this up and I will change to see. We'll share it and we will go into here and into here. All right, we are live and if you can see, hopefully you are on the hopefully you're on the recording on not on YouTube, but on the landing page. There should be a little box if you go into the bottom right corner. There's a little chat box, a little comment. If you can click on that little comment box, and when you do that, it'll say chat with us. If you can type a message there that says you can hear me, that would be great. And that would let me know that we can hear each other. And that would be good. And I'll make sure the comments are working. Yes, looks like they are working okay here. And I believe we're good to go. So just wanted to step on here. Thanks for coming by. For those of you who stopped by early, we're going to be getting into some fly tying content here, and it should be good. As you can see from the main page, I've got a little throwback information. Just dug these things up today, and it's kind of interesting the way how we've gone from, nothing's really changed. I'm not sure how old these books are that are on here, these fly tying 12 easy steps, but they're old school, and you could even see the little booklet on the right is a step-by-step guide, including materials and everything you need to get started. Probably my guess is from the 60s or 50s maybe. So yeah, thought that was pretty good. I'm going to hide this one note here, and but I believe we're good. So as soon as we hop on here, we're going to jump into some tips for those that are interested in getting started. If you are a beginner or if you've been doing it a little while, I know I talked to a couple people that were just getting started, or actually, I think one person started in January and they were pretty fired up about this. So hopefully we'll see them on, but it's kind of a little bit of a mixture. And since this is the first show, it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, I guess, as far as what to cover and how smooth everything goes. If you wanted to check out the fly fishing podcast, you can go to Wet Fly Swing on iTunes, and I'll note this a little bit later as we get into it. But we're actually going to be moving into season 2 of that, which is pretty amazing that we're already hitting season 2. I think we're getting close to 6 months in, and season 2 is going to be all about fly tying and really more of a connection to trout. So I think this is kind of timely that we're getting all this going. And I think it's going to be fun because I got some good guests. I'll take a drink here and get hydrated. It looks like we got about nine minutes or so before we're going to go on and connect with everybody else. But yeah, so the fly tying, the fly fishing podcast, we're going to be hitting fly tying, and I have a couple of guests right off the bat. Just talked to Dave Whitlock, for sure is going to be on, and I talked to who was another one, Skip Morris. Skip Morris for sure is going to be on early. Rick Hafley. So for those that know, at least in more of the trout game. Those are some pretty heavy hitters as far as you want to learn to tie the patterns and understand all about entomology. So pretty excited about that. But yeah, for this webinar, I'm going to jump into, we're going to start off just with some intro stuff, information on for those that are totally new to it. And then we'll quickly get into a bunch of tips and some things that'll help, I think, even some people that probably have some experience. There's always new tips you can learn. And then towards the end, I got a little bit of a special bonus to share. So, how about a shout out in the comments? If you click on the bottom right, if you're not on the the page, the outreach page, which should say at the top, free fly tying webinar with the countdown timer. If you don't see that, you're probably on YouTube, and go down into the bottom and click on the link below. That'll take you to that page, and then you can comment. So this will be the best way to actually provide comments as we're going through this. So for those that are there and you see the little comment box, why don't you click on that and give me a shout out as to where you're coming from. It's always good to hear, whether people are from local, or if you're from, if you're from outside of the country. I'm not quite sure. That would be good to hear. And that'll give me a heads up on who's all out there. So looks like we have definitely some local folks here. Plus, I think we've got at least one. I'm not quite sure where that country is, but let's see here. Okay, yep, and we are getting down, so we're getting close to 5 minutes away from launching into the program, and just wanted to give you a little more feedback on where we're coming from. Want to make sure, again, I think it sounds like I'm coming in loud and clear. If there is any issues throughout this, you can send a comment there, and right there on the screen too, you see wetflyswing.com/live. So if you type that in into your browser and hit return, that'll redirect you to the page that you should get on. So you'll get all the links. I'm going to be providing some links and things like that as we get into it, and it'll be easier to access from that point. So hopefully you can do that. Yeah, so we're gonna cover some, as I said, some of the basics, and those are going to include a lot of things that you think about when starting flies. And actually, I'm kind of looking at the fly that's shown on our page here, and I guess that is a royal wolf, I believe, and it is not one that we're going to cover here today, but we are going to get into a few different patterns. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, as we get into this, I'm not quite sure where this is going. I think we are on which today is Wednesday, and today is the fourth Wednesday. Yes, so today's the fourth Wednesday, and I believe if all works out and we find interest in doing this live style, then I will continue doing that, and I will probably try to incorporate some different things as I get feedback from people. But from here, we're going to start trying to hit the fourth Wednesday at this time. And I believe that this time works well for many, but I know it's a little bit early. It's not quite 5 o'clock, so we might be hitting on. We might be a little bit early for the folks that aren't out of work on the West Coast, but hopefully, maybe you're able to catch this during work hours, and you can hear what's going on. And we are getting a little bit closer, but yeah, after this, we'll have a few links and some other information to share. But I just want to jump right into the start and provide you some background and where you're coming from. If you get a chance, it would be good to turn off your notifications and just kind of get in a place where it's going to be fairly quiet without distractions, because that will make watching the video. I've got a couple of videos on here, more than a couple, but a little mixture of some stuff that I put together, and then some other great fly tires. And I've been catching up on some older stuff recently, and I hope to share some of that. Actually, I just recently interviewed Gene Herring from Fly Fish TV on the podcast, on the Wet Fly Swing podcast, and he mentioned that he might be interested in maybe trying to do something where we get some of that content out to everybody. And I can tell you, it's really good. I mean, it's definitely, it's older stuff, but there's some really high quality video, and I think we are going to find a way to share that out to all you. So I think pretty much, this is kind of a newer webinar here, but I mean, the content is pretty much timeless. If you watch one of these old boys on video, you're going to learn some stuff. There is no question about that. And I'm more of a video. I know everybody's different, as far as whether you're video or audio, or whether you're more of into reading books, whatever it is. I think people are different types of. I'm definitely more of a visual learner, and I'm kind of on the podcasting side. I'm totally addicted to the podcasting because I'm out driving a lot, and so I love downloading a hour-long podcast and learning that way. So this is kind of more of the video style, but again, I think I might even put some of this, if it works out, some of this might go on to some of the audio content eventually as well. So let's see here. We're getting a little bit closer. Okay, and I think we are still sounding good. So we were getting close, under 2 minutes away from starting our first fly tying webinar. This is going to be good. Who's on there? Who's on there? Can I get a woo woo? Or just a one? Give me a one. You're on the if you see the comment page. And we're going to have the official outreach email. I've sent a couple today, I believe, but there's going to be one that goes out here pretty quick. And Jimmy, I'm not sure if Jimmy's out there. Maybe he is on YouTube. And if you are and you're hearing this now, again, there's a link down in the description if you are on YouTube, where you can click that and they'll kick you over to this page, which is the main page that's going to get us started. And it'll be the best way to view some of the links and stuff we're going to share. And it'll just be probably the best way to keep up. So I've been chatting here for a little while about what we have going, and I'm just about ready to jump into this. An hour seems like a long time, but actually, as I've been doing my podcasts, I do them about an hour, and actually most of them turn out to be a little bit more than an hour. So it goes quick, and we'll see. I don't know if hopefully this one does as well, since it's the first one. But either way, we've got a little bit of a nice chunk of stuff to get through, and we are about there for the first webinar. Is going live here in a few seconds, and we are off. Okay, I'll just give it a few seconds to make sure we are everybody's good here. And actually, it looks like we still have a little bit of time. I want to make sure we don't get started. And I've got a little bit of background stuff that we can kind of get into as we go here, so you can kind of check out what we have going. So I'm just going to click to make sure. Yep. So that's just going to show us a little bit about how to turn off some of your notifications. So, hey, I just want to start this webinar since we are at the 4 o'clock hour, and want to welcome everybody who's coming on here and say thanks for stopping by to check out the fly tying webinar. I almost said the fly fishing show, but I didn't. So this is going to be good. I got some content here to kind of touch base with a lot of the beginners and those just getting started. And that is going to be pretty good. If you are on YouTube, there's a link right here where you can see the wetflyswing.com/live. You type that in, or if you go down below in the description, you can click on the link which will bring you, this link will bring you to the page you need to get to. This slash live will redirect you to that URL. So yeah, just thanks everybody. We're going to jump in here pretty quick. And as you can see, I got a little bit of throwback pictures here. I dug up some old books, some old fly tying stuff here, and that's kind of what the wet fly swing for me is all about. A little bit of the, throwing back to the history and kind of some of the old school. And actually, just learned today, I got a couple of new big guests coming up for the fly fishing show, which I'll talk a little bit about as we get into this. But let's just kind of jump into and start this up here. So first of all, how to increase your viewing experience. There's going to be some videos in this webinar. So if you can, turn off everything that's operating in the background, email, Skype, iTunes, things like that. Silence your phone, close your door, just kick back and give yourself a little bit of time to discover fly tying. The best way to do it is to actually take in everything we're going to talk about. Some of it may be repetition if you've had a little bit of experience, but I think that some of it will also be new, and especially if you're brand new, there's going to be some good stuff that will help to get you going here as we dive into it. So yeah, put everything on silence, and as we move through this, and you are in the right place if you don't know where to start with fly tying. Maybe you've started, but you don't know what to tie. You're kind of struggling to find out, what flies, what materials do I need, where do I get tools. Maybe you struggle with getting your proportions right. That's a pretty big pain point for a lot of people that are starting out. Making a clean head, if you've ever been in that situation where you tie a little bit too much up front and you get this big, bulky, ugly looking head. Maybe you want to spin deer hair better. There's a lot of things that we struggle with in fly tying. And, as a teacher of this, I've talked to a lot of people and helped a lot of people through some of these things. So we'll get into a few of these tips today as we move along. I want to note that there is a chat feature. If you go down to the bottom right corner, there's this little comment box, and that comment box will actually show you a little bit about, that'll show you right here in this area, will show you you can comment. You just click on that and then it'll pop up a box, and you can, if you have any feedback, I'll ask for a little bit of feedback throughout this. That'll be the way to do it. Again, if you're on YouTube, click on the link below to get over to this page, and you'll see this page to get started. So who am I? I am a lifelong fly tyer and teacher. Grew up in a fly shop as a young kid, spent most of my early days there, a lot of time around the shop tying and teaching. And recently I've just started a fly fishing show. I'm the host of the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Podcast, where season 1 was all about steelhead, and I interview the biggest names in fly fishing from around the world. And now I'm moving into season 2, which is going to be all about fly tying and more of a focus on trout. So this is going to be a perfect timing for this, because I'm going to have some big guests, including I think we're kicking it off with I've got some new tires, Tim Kamisa, and I've got Dave Whitlock, a bunch of great people coming on. So I'm excited in the next couple months as we transition into that. That's going to be fun, but that's who I am. And I want to just give you an update here. Stay tuned till the end of this one, especially if you're brand new to fly tying, because I have a big bonus I want to share that'll help you get started. All right. So I want to get a little feel for who's out there. And again, you've got the box in the lower right corner. Are you brand new to fly tying, or have you been tying for a while? Just type 0, 1, or 2. If you are brand new, never tied before, put 0 in the comment box. If you have been tying for less than a year, but have started, type 1. And if you've been tying for more than a year, type 2. And I'll give that a second. So I know from looks like there's a mix just from experience on these webinars, as far as who's going to be kind of a mixture, but it looks like it's kind of a 50-50 split on the people that have been on this list and expressed interest in the fly tying webinar. And for those that are new to fly tying, um, you know, the big question is what has stopped you from getting started, or what has been the struggle? And I know there's a few common struggles that people get into, and three common fears or struggles for beginners, however you want to look at it. And one of them is that people think it's too expensive, and there can be a high cost in fly tying because you've got materials that add up, and there are a lot of other things, tools. But really, I'm kind of gonna debunk this misnomer along with the too difficult phase, which I think is another stumbling block for people. They think that maybe it's a little bit too difficult. It's not going to be cost effective along with the difficulty, and then it's just going to take too much time. We all are struggling to find enough time to do things in the daytime, and we all kind of it seems like not having enough time is one of those common things that we talk about as a struggle. So I'm going to debunk actually all three of these. So if we look back, we got too expensive, too difficult, too much time. I am going to give you some tips that are going to kick these out completely and allow you to quickly and easily get started, because fly tying is too great. And I believe truly that everybody should tie their own flies. I think once you get going, it's kind of a meditative process, and it will be good if you give it a go. So, wanted to give a shout out to Josh Kaufman, the first 20 hours, and this kind of debunks a little bit of the time question or pain point. And you can Google up the first 20 hours, or Josh has a TED talk and a book with the same name. And basically, the premise is that he has shown that you can learn anything effectively in with 20 hours of dedicated time into that subject. And I think fly tying is no different. That as long as you have the right people around you, the right process of learning, that 20 hours is all it takes. And he shows, if you go to that TED talk, it's pretty cool because he breaks out a ukulele and busts out a nice riff song that he hit up, and he mentions after he sings and plays that song that it was the 20th hour was that while he was playing it, that was his 20 hours of studying the ukulele. So kind of extreme, I guess, maybe extreme version, but I think fly tying is the same way. If you can put in a few hours, each week or more, I think you can pick this thing up pretty quick. So why stick around? So I will answer some of the things we talked about here, some of those big myths. You will get a few big tips along the way. I'm going to hit on some stuff and have some people play some videos that I think you'll love. There's a little bit of a nice little PDF cheat sheet I'm going to provide at the end. And again, that big bonus, you don't want to you don't want to miss that one. So I'm gonna have all these as big staying points. And here's the 30 tips PDF updated. That'll be a little bonus at the end. And so I want to quickly talk a little bit about my aha moment and how that connects to, I think, you out there. So I started, as I mentioned, I've been fly tying for pretty much as long as I can remember, but I didn't get fully into the online stuff until 2014 when my second daughter was just about born. And I realized that I needed to make some more money. So I kind of ran into the online business realm and kind of got into it and started building a business in a separate field, really, and made some money, but kind of quickly realized that it wasn't really what I was into or passionate about. And since then, I had come and kind of jumped all into the wet fly swing, and have tried to make that, the goal of trying to find a way to use that to, support the family, get in and do some good things, get into more of the conservation side of things, and build products and services and connect with people with something I'm passionate about. So I do know from talking to many guests that the fly fishing industry and is not something you get into if you want to get rich for sure. So you got to love it. And this webinar right here is just one way for me to, kind of give back a little bit and connect with you and everybody out there as we go forward. So think about what your aha moment is. And I think sometimes we don't even realize we're in it until we're in it. But I think looking back on it for me, that's what it was. So hopefully by the end of this, maybe you can think a little bit about what yours is and how that connects to fly tying and what fly tying can mean to you. So let's go into a little bit of the agenda quickly. So we got about an hour. I think we are about 10 or so minutes into this one. So we're going to bust into some stuff here. We're going to have some tips on finding tools and materials, how to get started fast. I got some super tips and some extras, and that big bonus at the end is something that we are going to look forward to. So, teachers, you can read the quote there, open the door, but you must enter on your own. And that's kind of, I love this Chinese proverb because it says a lot about really what, uh, what it comes down to is that I can teach you some stuff along the way, and I'm going to show you some things today, but you've got to step up and do it yourself. And you've got to do what Alan says here. So let's see how this works. Let's see if we can get this, boot this up. And so there you go. And I'll go back to the, so we're talking about practice. We're talking about practice here. This is practice, and you've got to practice. If you're going to get good at this thing, you got to practice. So, so I want to get into that here, and we'll kind of keep moving this along. Let's see here. And I'm going to click here. So, so who's on the webinar today? And so it looks like we have uh, 50% less than a year, 50% more than a year, and 25% brand new to fly tying. So this is going to be interesting, and I think that there's definitely going to be some content here for everybody. And I will keep moving along as we get into this, and we'll see what we can find. So again, the call out to you is to take action and do your best to take action, take one step as we get into this. And I think we're going to see some good stuff coming out of this. All right, and we are switching over to a new mic setup for a second. Let's see how this works. And we're testing things out here, so let's skip along. So, and one more note on that bonus before we get into it. We're getting into some of the content. So, how to get started. This is what I don't want you to feel like. I don't want to have you guys overcomplicate this and make this feel like it's something that you know you're just kind of killing yourself over. There's a lot of tips that we're going to get into that will make this easier. So again, feel at ease as I'm going to give you something to not get it in that stage. But keep it super simple. The KISS method. Start easy and work your way up. Um, try flies, wet flies, nymphs. We're going to start with that on the basics. So the important thing here is that we are tying. We're not starting off tying Atlantic salmon flies. We're starting off with the very basics. We're starting off with the basics, and these basics are going to allow us to build up from that. So, you know, a woolly bugger is a common fly to start out with. You might then move over to a pheasant tail nymph. After the pheasant tail nymph, you might move over to a, you know, some sort of a March brown or something a little bit easy, and then maybe you get into tying parachute wings. And you know, and if that's the case, then that's great. But it's a good stepping stone to kind of keep it simple as you go. And so for tools, again, for those beginning, we want to get the basics: basic vise, scissors, bobbin. These are really the tools. If you had some thread and you had your hooks, this is what you need to tie flies. So if you are brand new, This is very at the basics. There's some other stuff, including hair stackers, bodkins, hackle pliers, a lot of other things that you will need eventually as well. But if you want to break it down, this is it. If you get these things, you can tie a fly, and you don't have to spend a ton of money to get into this either. That's not one of those things where it's required at all. You can actually get into this very reasonably. And as far as getting tools and materials, there are a bunch of great online sources. If you don't have a local shop near you, there's four that are very good, that have tons of materials, tons of tools. Feathercraft.com, Jan's Netcraft, JS Fly Fishing are just a few. There are a bunch more out there, but to give you a start, this is one place you can actually go and find out where you can get some of this stuff. And that's one good place. So I'm going to move on here. Other sources of materials include, these are some other things that you might run into that might help out as well, including eBay, friends and family, garage sales, local meetups. These are all places that they can definitely help you get along. And if you don't feel like buying everything at retail value, retail price, then this might be the way to go. And then we'll clip in once you have your vise and materials. Once you have your vise and materials, then so let's dig into some tips. For time's sake, I will cover slides, but we'll have a live webinar in the future to test out the content, and this will get you going here. And let's see if this works. So here we go, the tips section. So proportions. Use a pattern starting off. And with this pattern, I want you to begin with grabbing a pattern as a pattern. This is one good tip when starting out with your proportions. So we have a pattern that we want to kind of mimic here, and get this from somebody, a local shop, somewhere where you can set this down beside you when you're starting to tie your fly, and start with the tail when you're getting going. So here's your tail. If you want it this long, tie that tail in and take a look. Did you make it the same length? If not, pull it out, adjust it. I'll show you a couple tips as we get into this on how you can adjust that tail very quickly. Same with the rib and the dubbing. When you start on the abdomen, try to build your abdomen so it looks similar to this. And if you finish up here, you get halfway up and it's not looking good, you can always take it back and redo it. And slowly, and then go to the thorax, put your wing case in the thorax and do the same thing. If it's not looking good, you could always kind of go back and redo it. So again, finish your pattern. The one thing to remember about proportion is you'll get better and better as you tie the fly. So your first fly is not going to be great. Your third will get a little better. By the time you get up into your dozen flies, you'll be feeling pretty good about it. So I want to show you a quick tip, and let's see if this one plays here. Just going to click on this. We'll see if we can get over here. Okay, for this one, we're going to show you a way to get your materials cut really close. So instead of when you're finished, when you get up to the front, a lot of times you want to have a really tight, clean cut. So instead of just clipping it like that, which can work in a lot of ways, twist this up like this. See that? Twist it really tight and hold tight, and then clip. And as you can see, it just gets you a really nice,
You're never going to get all of it, but you can see that one gave you that really nice clean. See how clean that is? Boom. So that's one way to keep your to get your materials clipped off. We'll see you in the next one.
Okay, so did you see that on, I'll go back to the slideshow here, but how to clip tight. So that was a quick little tip, a nice one to use. So it's not always critical, but sometimes you'll really want to try to get away from bulk, and that little twist clip tip will allow you to keep, especially on the really smaller flies, will allow you to keep tying without having an issue with a bunch of bulk. So quick little tight clip tip, something like that. This one is another good one. Crowding the eye. A lot of new tires have this problem with crowding the eye. You come in here and you tie your fly and you got it going, everything's good, and all of a sudden you get to the end, you realize you got a pile of material right up front here, and you can't tie a head. Your head's just totally bulky. It looks terrible. Sometimes it's even so bad it's getting up over your eye, and you know, maybe you can't even get your leader through it. So a quick tip on this is to, again, use a pattern that you find a pattern you want to tie, set down, and make note of where the head ends. And I'm going to show you a video here from Kelly quickly, the man, who hopefully will chat more about this, but let's just show you quick. And I think there's an ad here, but we'll skip through it. Can we skip through the ad? Help, no, skip ad.
This seal bugger, and you want, you're
screen.
looking at it, and you set this up next to your hook, and so you can see the head. And so you're going to do it. What I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you start your thread where this head ends back here. And so from that point, no materials can go forward. And so if you always look at that thread, you'll know I can't go past this. And the same goes with the tail. The tails can be just as important as the head. And so when I set this stuff on here, there's a place I like, and this is personal. Everybody's got a, you know, some of your low dress steelhead flies, or maybe forward, maybe it's Atlantic salmon flies out there. It doesn't matter. It's just be consistent and have a reason your materials are where they are. This tail, I want it to be right above the barb every single time. This is a whip tail. This is a marabou tail that's designed to swim, right? And so I'm going to have a way to put the materials there. So back to the head. I grabbed Johnny's bobbin with his pink thread in it. And so you could see this when I put it on here. So I'm going to take this hook and I'm going to look at where the head starts on this fly. And you can see when we do the close-up, it starts right here. So I'm simply going to take my thread and I'm going to start it right there. And I'm going to start advancing back. Double check it. Look at the thing. Is it all right? Right there's the eye. There's my thread. I'm going to have my head, you know, 8 turns or whatever it is forward. Nothing gets to go in front of this. You cannot, when you start getting up forward and you start seeing your materials build up, if you think you're going to rush that or crowd it, back off, back your materials off. And then your consistency will begin to get better. All right. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come back here. And I really think this one's as common, if not as common a mistake as rushing the head. But this one may be even more important, especially if you're going to tie dry flies or nymphs. And you'll see people tie their materials and their tails will actually bend around the bend of the hook. It's telling you that you got way too far back. And so especially with a dry fly, your tails are going to pierce the surface and the fly's not going to float. So back to this. So we've got our fly here. And we know where we want our body and our tail to.
So again, so you saw there what Kelly was talking about, and he was kind of getting into a little bit more too on the tail, which is a good tip as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But again, just a reminder, don't let it go past that spot on the your thread, and you will be good at whatever hook. So another tip, tying small flies. So if you want to tie this little fly down here, this little guy, you need to not start off with the super little guy. You need to come up to the bigger guy and start there. So it's a lot easier to tie on larger sized hooks and patterns. And once you get that down, you get the hackling down and this fly down, you can work your way down to this one and then work your way down to this one, and then work your down to as small as you need to get. And then as soon as then you can turn around. If you have good eyes, you're tying size 24s, and you're good to go. So a quick little tip on tying smaller flies. This is a beginner tip for sure, what thread to use. So if you are just starting out, tan, brown, and black are the most common 6/0, 8/0 sizes. Go with the black 6/0 if you are brand new. Get your tools and materials and go with that to get started. That'll get you going. I want to move into briefly here a little bit on fly tying for dry flies. And so again, when you're getting your materials, we mentioned at the start, there is some costs. There definitely is some cost to getting these materials. So if you want to get started, you probably should not get saddle hackles. And these saddle hackles are great, but the difference is that the saddles are going to have basically a bunch of hackles, very long. They're all the same size. So this might be all size 14s, all size 12s, whatever. But a neck actually has a variety of sizes. So down here, you're going to get some small hackles, and as you move up, they get larger. So you can just cover a lot more sizes. So if you're just beginning, definitely a lot better to get one grizzly neck as opposed to one grizzly saddle, that's just in this color. But this is a good range of colors. Definitely, grizzly is one of the best for sure. It's kind of like peacock. Another dry fly tip on sizing is that a lot of people, when they're tying their dry flies, I know hackling is one concern for a lot of people, but when they hackle, they tend to make their hackles a little bit too small. So you want to make your hackle, and I guess we can see it maybe on that one. Yeah, that one's got a decent hackle, but you might even make it a little bit longer. So if you're tying, say, a size 14, and this hackle gauge shows you, if you get one of these, basically, if you want to tie a size 14 in this range, wind your hackle around, and it's going to poke out this way. So instead of tying a size 14 hackle, why don't you go down and select a size 12 hackle, which is a couple sizes bigger. And when you wrap that, it'll just be a better fly all around. You want to go a little bit bigger when choosing a hackle. For tail measurements, this is something that will come up quite a bit as you get into fly tying, and it goes back to how you're measuring the fly. And for this one, we always talk about the hook shank, which is pretty much from the bend of the hook over to the eye of the hook. So if you're tying a tail that's that length from the hook shank, it's that distance from there to there. So you can see this tail is about that distance. So, whatever we're talking about, hook shank, half the hook shank, a quarter, that's what we're talking about. A little tip there. And right along with that is the tail. So you can see this fly. And again, see the hackling on this, see how long it is? It's down here. This is definitely a nice little longer hackle. And it's just is going to sit better. It's going to ride better. It's going to perform better. And you can see the tail. So the tail starts here and goes to here. You see how long that is? And that's the length of not this body, but the length of the hook shank from the bend to here. That's that length. And versus this fly, as you can see how short it is? It's got it from here to here, That's about the length of the body. So that's a little bit short. And what you get with a longer body like this is you get a tail that's going to float better. It's basically going to sit on the water. And this one is even worse than short. It's poking down. You definitely see how it's tied down on the bend. You don't want that because it's going to poke down into the water surface and it's not going to float as well. Spinning deer hair, I want to show you a quick video on spinning deer hair if you haven't done this. This is just a short one that'll get you into this. Let's see if we can open this up, and there might be a little commercial. Yep, Mother's Day coming up here. Get ready. Get ready. I'll skip and skip. Here we go.
So anywhere you want.
Let's take a look at this.
So this is what I do to spin. Basically, I place it on top of my right hand, and I actually kind of smother the hook with it. And then I do a loose turn over the top. I'll do a second turn, and all I do is I'll cinch down. And that there is how it spins around your hook shank. And it's as easy as that. 2 loose turns, and you tight one, and there it is. And then all I'll do now is take my thread in front. You can wind it through if you want. I just take my thread in front and I'll butt my thread up against the next. I just pull all these back, get them out your way. Apart from this one here, it's getting on my nerves, I want to snap it off. And then we'll do this one more time. So I'll take another clump. I won't stack this one just for the speed of the video. So again, you'd place this on top if you were doing the muddler. Try and shroud your hook with it. Come over the top, loose turn, another loose turn, and then cinch down. And then that, as you can see, spins it around your thread. If you're doing your muddler, you pull this back, or you could take your thread through it to the front. There we go. And this is basically how you would do your muddler heads. So next one is creating like a wing. So
Okay, so let's get back to the slideshow here. So another little, just a quick tip. I know spinning deer hair is definitely another concern for some people, and that's just a little heads up on that. We'll kind of move along here and move into wet flies. We're kind of zipping through these things just because we definitely don't have a ton of time here, and but I want to touch on a few things that I think are cool. So this one, I'm going to jump into a few more videos here. This is on the tail, again, just doing a typical tail. This could be for a dry fly or a wet fly. And this will show you quickly how to tie that tail in effectively. And one little quick tip. Take a look here. I'll get this.
Okay, I wanted to show you a quick tip about tying on your tail. First, we're going to start with some pheasant tail. We're just going to take off a nice little clump, about just not a big one, about like that. And I'll cut that off. When you're doing this, this is a good way to keep the tail from sliding down. So we're tying right here, not quite on the bend. I'm going to get the first wrap in place, keep it on top. But we're tying, there's 2, there's 3, 4, and then all you need to do is put one little wrap back behind to secure it, and that gives it that little, it will keep it from flopping down on you. See how that's going to rest? So there's your tip on the tails, and then you can wrap back forward and finish this one up. But
okay, so there's your tail tip, a quick one. You know, if you hadn't seen that one definitely helps. And we will move on to this pinch and squeeze. So this one is another good one if you're tying wet flies especially. And it's just a quick one, but it is very helpful if you're trying to tie on wings. We'll look at this real quick here.
Using a pinch wrap, take 2 very loose turns with your tying thread, and then pull straight up to compress the segments and secure them to the top of the hook. Maintaining the pinch, make several more wraps to make sure the wings stay in place. You can then snip the butt ends off close, being careful not to cut your tying thread. Use a few more wraps to cover up the butts and form a nice, neat head. Use a 4 or 5 turn whip finish to complete the fly. And if you like, add a drop of head cement.
So there you go. So another one to that little pinch squeeze, you know, again, as was noted there. So when you're wrapping it, you not only pinch it, but you squeeze it every time you're wrapping up, and that keeps that beautiful wing as you saw there. So if you get into those wet flies, I'm going to do a lot more on wet flies coming up here, and actually I have a guest on the Fly Fishing podcast who's going to talk all wet flies, which is definitely old school, but some good stuff. Here's another quick one. I want to show another less than a minute here on teasing dubbing out, and really love this because if you haven't done dubbing before, this is the way to pull out the dubbing, and this is the way to work with dubbing.
I wanted to show you a little quick tip on dubbing. This is a good way to get your dubbing materials out. So I've got a little clump here, and instead of just grabbing a big clump when you're putting on your noodle, what you want to do is just tease out, just like this. You start and just tease out a little bit. See how I'm doing that? And what that does is allows you to put that little noodle and allow you to keep a better noodle. And you can even watch as I'm going. I'm just going to kind of roll as I'm teasing out. You see that? See, I'm taking a little bit at a time. Just and look what it is. I've basically made my noodle without any thread, and that's what you want. I'll zoom out here. I'll zoom out here a little bit here and show you. So you can see that little noodle, and that's without threads. So that's, you know, and I'm just kind of teasing it out like that. That's what you want to do when you're taking dubbing out. So it's a little.
So as you can see there on that one, you know, I kind of showed the example of teasing it out and making a noodle, which, you know, typically you're going to tease it out and then put that on your thread, and then you're going to wrap it into a nice little noodle. But we'll touch a little more on the dubbing here on another good tip. But just to be aware, because you're going to be using dubbing quite a bit. This one is on anchoring a hackle, and I'll quickly show you how to properly anchor hackle. This is on another wet fly here. Pop this one up.
Okay, I'm going to tie in a front hackle here now, and I'm going to show you what you need to do here. So this is a good way to tie it in so it's secure. So I'm going to pull back. I'm going to pull back this to expose the area I want to tie in. So right there. So instead of just tying that whole thing in and clipping it off, it's always better to clip it up front and leave a little tag. So I'm going to clip it right there. See, I left that little tag right there. It's a little guy that's going to help secure this. So what I'll do is just make one wrap over the top there, and then I can pull it to get it in position 2, 3, 4, you know, and it's good. Really, after 3, you're good to go. And so once you got that in, it's totally secure. That's not going anywhere, and it minimizes the thread wraps. And then you can wrap your material.
So I want you to see. Did you notice that how when I was tying that, it only took a few little wraps? And that's one tip that if you don't remember anything else, remember that you know, it's not always critical to wrap few wraps when you're doing it, but on some flies it is. If you're tying very small flies, it's going to be important to not wrap too much. So that little deal where you can wrap things now with just 1, 2, or maybe not more than 3 wraps and it's secure is an important thing to remember as you get into it. This one comes from Tim, who I've also had on the pod, or who I will have on the podcast here. And this is a beautiful little fly here, a little wet fly with a nice long beard. So this is the beard. I'm going to talk a little bit, or Tim's going to talk a little bit about the beard here and how to tie it. And I'll just show you quickly here, and then we'll get back to it.
Okay, I'm going to show you how to tie in a beard on a wet fly. So I'm going to go back to that original feather that I pulled prior. I have that nice creamy center again. I have those brown tips, and I have that almost that black brown in between those two. So to tie this one in, we have a couple different things going on. First of all, we're going to get rid of some of the tip fibers because we don't want too many of those in there. So I'm just going to grab this feather by its tips and stroke a lot of the remaining fibers back because we want those ones. So I have them stroked back like this. I'm going to trim that tip. So I can keep this nice and steady so you guys can see this. Then I'm going to pull all those fibers back forward real gently. You're going to see I have a V that I've exposed. So I got rid of all those inner fibers because they'll just bunch up a little bit too much for the beard. I'm going to do the same with some of the bottom fibers. I don't want them in there. This hook that I have in my vise right now, it's around a size 14, a little extra long. I'm not going to be tying in a specific fly. I'm not going to tie a specific fly necessarily, but I just want to show you about how many fibers that I'll tie in for my throw. So I just stroked a number of those down. If I hold it up next to this this hook, I can see just about how many fibers I want. You want a few more, you can just stroke some of those fibers back up. You want a few less, you can then do the opposite. And I'm just going to make a cut below that point. So let me show you how this feather is now starting to look. So this is the entire feather that you see. All right, I'm going to take that feather now. I'm going to just turn it so the top of the feather's facing the bottom of the hook. And I'm some of those fibers back. And I'm going to push it up against the bottom of the hook and then tie basically just in a reverse manner. Just tying, so I'm really just pulling it up towards the hook. Now there's a few other ways to tie in a beard, because some guys prefer to tie it like a hackle and just wind it around the hook, and then from that point they can just pull all those fibers towards the bottom.
So as you can see, and then Tim's going to pull that up, and he's going to cinch it up right up really close.
Whenever I'm tying in a beard, I'll make it a little,
and it's going to look really nice. And he's going to be able to adjust it. So that's tying in a beard. I'm almost done here with this little quick section. I want to show you quickly wrapping a soft hackle. And this is a cool little tip, again, not only for soft hackles, but for all sorts of hackling. When you're wrapping a hackle, a good way to make sure the hackles are going the right way. So you can take a quick look at this one's a short one.
Okay, so when you wrap your hackle,
take a look at how I do this.
Before you turn, you want to pull back. I'm going to show you how this works. Pull up. I'm just going to pull back on these materials so they lean back as I wrap over. So you can see, so I'm pulling back, and I'm going to wrap back over like that. Again, as I come back through, I'm going to pull all these back so they lay back nicely. Just like that. Come through. And again, I'm going to pull back as I turn. As I wrap. Do the same thing with this one. We're getting up close. Then as you're getting to the front, we're going to want to tie it off. But that's a little trick to help keep your hackles splaying back in the right location. And you can always finish it up here when you get to the front. But I just wanted to provide that little tip on, again, more of the soft hackle tying tips. And we will see you in the next one.
Okay, and we'll close that one down and zip on back over to the slideshow. So I got a few more tips here I wanted to share, and you kind of get in the feel of this. We've kind of done a little bit on dries, a little bit on wets. There's getting into the wrapping. I talked a little bit about that, controlling your wraps, not always critical, but I did want to show you on dubbing, because we talked a little bit about making the noodle, which, is important, and that's when we're wrapping the dubbing on the noodle. There's also using a thread loop, which is a really cool way to do this. Dubbing loop, there's a whole tool you can use, but I'm going to show you quickly how to do the thread loop. Actually, we'll show you here on this one. And let's see, I think there might be
thread.
Yeah.
Pull down on your bobbin to expose about 3 inches of thread.
Take a look at
give
this
it a
one.
counterclockwise spin. This will uncord and flatten the thread, so it's like floss. Run your dubbing needle behind the thread to flatten it even further. Use your needle to split the thread roughly in half and insert the index finger of your left hand between the two strands. Start placing small slips of dubbing between the strands. Once the split segment is filled, remove your index finger and give your bobbin a healthy clockwise spin to cord up the thread, trap the dubbing, and form a spiky rope. You can then take wraps with the rope to create a fuzzy-looking body on the fly.
Pretty cool, right? There you go. That's the example of a nice little handy, especially for a lot of flies where you don't want to break out the dubbing tool. And here's another one. This is wrapping behind the thread. And I'm not going to have any videos here, but again, with Peacock, it really helps because it can splay out on you. So if you keep your thread back here as you wrap, and you wrap into your thread will just keep moving down, and it will keep your materials together. So that's one we can check on later. I did want to show you a quick video on counter wrapping. If you haven't ever done any counter wrapping, and you got to watch this one because there's a double counter wrap on this one that's very sweet and something you gotta use if you
Fly
haven't done it.
bodies created using wraps of delicate materials like pheasant tail fibers and peacock curl can easily be cut by trout teeth and unwind, rendering the fly all but useless. Counter wrapping with wire, thread, or tinsel over top of the delicate materials will greatly increase the fly's durability. Counter wrapping means wrapping a second material in the opposite direction over top of the first. The second material crosses the fibers of the first numerous times and really stands out, enhancing segmentation. Wrapping the second material in the same direction as the first, although helpful, does not cross the underlying material as often and tends to sink in, making segmentation less visible. This modified woolly bugger illustrates how counter wrapping can be used multiple times in a single
So here you
fly.
go. See how he's wrapping into the thread.
Peacock curl is wrapped normally from back to front. Then a hackle feather, although wound in the same direction around the hook shank, is wrapped from front to back, so it counter wraps the peacock curl below. Finally, a wire rib is wound from back to front, thus counter wrapping the hackle stem, producing an extremely durable bugger.
So there you go. Pretty sweet stuff there. That's something definitely, if you haven't heard about that one, that you will be using. So lots of good tips there, and I want to see if you could see how, you know, just on the how quickly we did that with some tips and some videos. You know, how quickly a little bit of help and a little bit of step-by-step instruction. As we were getting down here, I wanted to jump into a second phase in this, and this gets into a little bit of the fly tying mentor. And this is well, there's a lot of things that are involved in the fly tying mentor, but part of it is easily and quickly stepping you through the process. And I want to just walk you through what this is before we get off here, and we'll get into a little bit of Q&A on the end here. But so what the fly tying mentor is a step-by-step course instruction to tie at least 15 patterns. We have those listed in the course modules, but it also includes fly tying materials delivered to you for each of the patterns. We have a connection with a private Facebook group. It's 100% online, so you can access it from anywhere. I will have personal coaching involved in it. There's 53 step-by-step videos, lots of stuff involved in this thing. And it is 100% money back guarantee. There's basically the feedback we're getting as we launch into this second version is that the personalized coaching is very helpful, that people tend to get lost. And, you know, and again, as we get into this, you can, you know, refund if you're unsatisfied, no problem. What you create is materials to tie at least 12 flies each through each module. There's typically, you'll tie more than that depending on your time. We'll get into streamers, nymphs, dry flies, and wet flies. We didn't even touch on streamers and nymphs today, any of the quick tips. Like I said, 15 different materials, and it'll allow you to get in. If you're new, I did see there's a number of people that noted on 0, so you're just brand new to fly tying. If you're new to it and you want to cut through some of the clutter, the modules and the step-by-step course instruction is what we got. So this is a little screenshot of what you get here. I'll be walking you through with video tutorials and guides and cheat sheets as we go. We've got a bunch of different modules, actually 6 total. So we go through each of the different categories, including streamers, nymphs, wet flies, dry flies. We kind of cover it all. And as we get into module 6, we wrap up the process. But we do have a little bonus on this I'm going to touch on a little bit. So the question that I like to ask before we get out of here is, you know, what is your time worth? And are you willing to pay to avoid searching YouTube, to get out of the confusion, you know, of kind of all the clutter of trying to find out, you know, what patterns to tie? And this is just kind of a way to kind of put it all in one streamlined course. So again, just breaking down a little bit of what you might pay for some of this stuff, materials and tools. You know, you might easily pay $50 or $100 or more to get that stuff. You know, materials, definitely, you know, a few $100s. That's something easily can add up if you don't know what you're doing. My services, definitely, if I was going to charge on an individual basis, might be, again, in the few $100s over this potentially a 5-month period here. Private Facebook group, you add that in. Total, if you add everything together, that might put you over in the $1,000 range, you know, at a minimum for this service, which we offer for 6 months. And this is the bonus here. It's actually a 5-month, but we got a little bit of bonus I'm going to touch on here. So if you want to get this entire package of the Fly Tying Mentor, which will cover you and walk you through tying all your basic flies, get you started, get you materials, we're giving a special deal here if you're on for $99, just under $100. And that's definitely, I've got a couple bonuses to throw in for you here. And these are kind of the 4 big bonuses that I want to talk about. And one of them is the Facebook group. So once you get in today, if you get in and purchase here, you will get grandfathered in. So you will be in the group. You'll be able to talk to people, and you'll be in for good. My services for the first 5 months, I'm going to be there to walk you through step by step. And I know I've talked to some people that these services have been, probably one of the biggest things is, when you have flies, you have questions, you can just call me and I'll, reach out. We'll take a look and see how things are going. Another bonus, tools definitely are going to be part of this package. So you'll get your fly tying, your VISE and materials to get started. And I'm going to throw in 1 extra month bonus. So those are the 4 big bonuses. So again, the private Facebook group, the personalized service, the tools, and the extra month. So this extra month bonus, if you get this tonight, will include after you've gone through the first basically 5 modules, well 6 if you include the intro. I'm going to look at giving you another month of tying what you are really focused on. After this, you should have a good idea, especially if you're brand new, what you want to get into, what you want to fish for, and that'll be part of it. So so that kind of gives you a rundown of what we're looking for. So again, if you want to check this out, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can either go for the $99, which is definitely the most cost-effective way to do it, and that'll get you in the door. Or you can go for the $29.99 per month over 5 months. So that's would be a total of $150. So you pay a little more, but if you wanted to get into that, you can work that route if it's easy for you. But definitely this one is the way to go. 90-day money-back guarantee. Yeah, no questions. I mean, if you aren't satisfied at all anytime, I will give you your money back. This is all about getting you tying flies. And so final step, if you want to go to wetflyswing.com/start, I got a couple other bonuses here to jump into to cover a couple more links, but that's one place you can go to right now, and that will get you started. Let's see. So if you type that in, I should have a link that will be, yeah, so that's the best way to get that. And then here's what it's going to look like when you click. If you go to wetflyswing.com/start and you type in that URL, and it'll open up this page. So it's really simple. This is the mentor. Basically, if you click the $29.99, that'll get you in on the monthly fee for 5 months with a bonus. And then if you want to just click this one for the $99.99 per month, that'll be the other way to go about doing it. And you can also click below the video on the screen. There should be a click here to buy now. That'll get you to the same page, and you'll be able to purchase this. So if you want all this, I'm going to give you 15 minutes here as we go through a little Q&A and kind of wrap things up a little bit, and we'll kind of see if we have any other questions. But yeah, so there you go. If I'm not sure where you're listening from, but /start will get you there, or they click on the link on the page, which again, if you're on YouTube, you can go down to the description and click on in the description, there's a link there that get you to this page as well. So I kind of zipped through that because I didn't realize things were going to go so fast, but we are here, and I wanted to touch on a little bit on the Q&A as we get started. I'm going to put a little timer on here for myself to make sure we don't go over too far. And we'll talk a little bit about a couple of things. So yeah, as you can see, we definitely went through a number of different things, and I know that some of this it feels a little overwhelming. I hope that seeing some of these tips makes you realize that there are a lot of easy ways to get into this, as opposed to searching YouTube all day long, especially if you don't have the resources and materials local. So one question that comes up quite a bit from students is, how long will the course take? And I will say that I think the monthly mentor style is really great because it walks you through one module every month, and you have time each week to go through the emails, and you can kind of take your time covering things. But it really depends. If you want to nail this stuff out and go consume, and you're kind of like a binge consumer, then I would say people have done, this, you can do it quicker. You could do it in a week. You could probably even do it in a weekend if you wanted to. But that's kind of just throwing it out there. It is possible, but for the most part, it might be easier to spread it out a little bit just to give you that time, because we are covering a lot here as we get into this. And, I don't have enough time for the course. I think we talked a little bit about that really you don't need that much time, especially if you spread it out. If you can do like an hour a day would be cool. If you can kind of just set that that time aside and have your fly tying area set up. Doesn't take much, a little card table in the corner with your tools and materials. And if you can do that, that's really good enough. If you add more time, that's great. But it doesn't remember the 20 hours at the start. That's all it takes, 20 hours. If you can do this dedicated, go through this course, you can do it. And so how soon can you start? This is another common question that comes up. So this next version we're launching here is going to come out on the 15th. So if you get it tonight, we are going to start all of the content on the 15th of the next month here. So I guess we got about 20 days, but in that time, I'll have a bunch of, have the group going. We'll have a bunch of other freebies and some different content building up to that to keep you in touch and connected. But that is kind of the new launch date. So that's when we're going to jump into all this and have everything ready for you. But if you do want to get a head start on it, that is one way to do it. And we just had the other one little tips page I wanted to show you. So before, let's see here. Yeah, we covered that. So that's it. I just wanted to kind of leave this open if there's any other questions. I know that, occasionally some of the common questions, we touched on some of them today. If you have them and you're still there, you can click in the comments, click the little, remember the lower right, which many of you did already, and throw a comment there if you have any questions about the fly tying mentor or just kind of fly tying in general. We can go from there and see if there's anything else that comes up. And looks like we got a couple here. So one of them is on one of them is talking about, I guess we covered this a little bit on wrapping hackle. I guess we didn't get into it fully on the fully on wrapping the hackles for dry flies, but we did show you that wet fly hackle. So there are a bunch of different techniques, and in the dry fly module we get into you'll want to make sure to cover that, obviously. But that little tip I showed you, pulling the hackle back, is a very nice one, and that's one that works well on a lot of these when you're wrapping hackles. There are some other tips again on the dry fly that we'll get into. Another one here on I guess head cement or lacquer, and there's definitely a few different things out there, a lot of products. Typically head cement is the one that you'll get in your kit. And but there are some other, there's the UV resins, there's a lot of that stuff. And the UV, we will touch on that, but we're not going to get into, actually, that's not going to be part of your material list unless it's something that you exclusively request, something you need, then we can talk about it. But yeah, head cement definitely is the kind of the typical standard go-to. And, that going back to the materials, just so you get a better feel for what you get in your, in your course. So it's going to have, for each fly, we're going to have one main fly and then a few bonus fly materials to cover for each one. So it's not going to have everything, but like I said, you're going to have a dozen hooks to tie for each module and then a bunch of other materials. So along that route, you can tie some variations and you can follow the patterns we touch on. But also, if you need extra materials, I do have connections, obviously, to get more materials. So that's something you can always check with me on. If there was a certain pattern you needed to get, although I don't have an online store, basically, but I can, order anything and get you things at a little bit better deal and easier if that's something you need. So, yeah, so there's a few other things coming through, but I think we kind of already touched on that. We had a little bit early on, a little bit of a skip in there. I hope the audio, I believe it sounded like it was coming in pretty good for most people, but we did have that little glitch at the beginning. Some of the other things that we get into, I know, talking about the steelhead flies and some of the other genres of flies, warm water flies, some of the specific saltwater flies, some of that stuff we are not going to get into in this beginner course because those are just kind of upper level stuff. And as we build on, and if you stay with the mentor and go into other courses, there will be that potential that you can kind of dig into some of those flies. But until we get there, this one is actually just a beginner course. So we are keeping it fairly straightforward. Some of the flies we showed you there, we're gonna touch on some of the caddis, you know, the pheasant tails, hare's ear types of patterns. Like I said, there's 15 patterns, and I can get you all those details to see as we get into the course materials and see exactly what specifically, you know, what else you want to tie. So I guess we're on here. I think we're about, gosh, we're a good hour in. I started on this thing let's see, we started on this about quarter till, and I'm going to let this run a little bit longer, because if there's anybody else that if you want to jump on and get the special bonuses, again, for those bonuses that we looked at, the 4 bonuses that you will get, let's see if we can remember those. Zip back here and walk through. There we go. There we are. So the Facebook group, again, so this is one thing that having that group, who doesn't love a nice group, kind of a mastermind sort of thing where you can talk about flies and have, you know, get help from me. I'll be in the group on a regular basis, at least once a week as we get into this, kind of answering questions and things like that. And there will be times when I'll be in there more often. And this will be part of this personalized service will be outside of the group. This will be more of the one-on-one that I'm offering as a bonus, which is a totally extra deal. The tools, again, that normally doesn't come with the mentor unless you pay for it. I'm going to throw that in as a bonus if you want to grab this while we're on here. And the 4th one is that the 6th bonus module, which is going to get really specific. And again, after we've been in this for a number of weeks and months, you'll have a better feel for what that next step is. So there are some other fly tying boxes out there, you know, you've probably heard about them. And I think we're a little bit different than those. And the biggest thing that separates us from, I think, the rest of the packet is this personalized service. It's really about the one-on-one stuff, and it's not about just getting your materials and in a book, which is fine. As you saw from our initial, I don't know if you remember our first slide there that showed some of the old books and stuff like that. But yeah, you can get books, and there's lots of great books out there for sure. But this is more about bringing it back and having, you know, full circle on, you know, step-by-step course instruction, and then having my services there to help you along. So if that's what you're into and, you know, you feel like that's a good way you learn, I know it's something I do. So let's take a look here if we have anything else coming in. And it's like, it looks like we have a couple more questions here. So, so one of them was on different patterns to check out. So as you saw on the webinar here, I provided some links to some people that provided some different patterns. And I think, you know, getting started, if you are, again, we have some different people. I saw some 0, 1s, and 2s. So if you're brand new to this, I think the general stuff like the woolly buggers, the woolly worms, some of those basic patterns are really the best way, because they break down. You have a tail, you have a body, and a hackle. They're really, really basic. I mean, you've even got like the San Juan worm. I might not recommend that one as the total beginner one, but I kind of like starting with the woolly worm. There's some other caddis for dry flies, and elk hair caddis is a great way to start out. You know, tying some of like the Catskill style dry flies, those are pretty tough and probably not the first ones you want to get going on. As far as leeches, there's you know, a bunny leech is another good pattern to get going on that lets you use some other materials. We are going to tie spruce fly. So anything that has kind of some of those feather wings, those aren't always the easiest. And we touched a little bit on that that little March Brown today with the pinch squeeze. Another one that if you can get that pinch squeeze down, that's a pretty good fly to tie. Just answering that question, I guess one more I'd throw out there is the soft hackle. The soft hackle is definitely a good one to tie. It's got your traditional. It's a great pattern. It can be tied with a lot of different colors, but you know, a peacock and a little bit of peacock, a little bit of hackle up front, and you're good. Maybe a little bit of rib. So we're getting closer now to wrapping this up. I guess we're past the 5 o'clock hour, or let's say 5 o'clock where I'm at. But I guess if you're at, it might be later. It might be 8 o'clock. It might actually be the next day. I know there's at least one person on here where it is, I believe, 8 a.m. Thursday. So so we're still on Wednesday here, but yeah, so a few more minutes here. I'll let this roll here and see if any other questions come in. Again, I haven't even checked to make sure how we're doing here. I'll just click through and take a quick look. Yeah, so make sure all the links are working. It looks like I said, again, if you wanted to grab that second amount on the course, that's one way you can go about it. But again, I think today we just touched the surface, and I hope that as we get into this, if I see enough support for this kind of webinar style, I'll do more of these. Right now, I'm going to see how this one turned out. Looks like we definitely had a little bit of support here, some interest from people. I know I talked to a few people and here, beforehand and on the webinar tonight. So I'm excited to talk more to you and answer some of your questions. And we'll just kind of zip through it again, back to here, and we are almost down to that 15 minutes. So we answered those questions, and that's going to be the final slide. So yeah, before we get out of there, I just want to thank everybody for coming by and spending a little bit of time here. I know we all, our time is the most limited resource for sure. So I appreciate you listening to me. I want to give a little plug to the Fly Fishing Podcast. If you go to Wet Fly Swing on iTunes or any of the podcast, the podcatchers, you can check out Wet Fly Swing. Like I said, we're going to have a huge push to some of the big fly tying guests. So it's going to be a great late spring, early summer as we get into this. Lots of stuff to learn. So I hope to see you there, and I hope to answer any questions you have as we get into it. Today, I know we didn't get into everything we could, but it was just a start. And like any great, anything great, you got to start somewhere, right? So I appreciate everybody coming on. I'll just give you a few more minutes before we knock this one off here. And for those that are still hanging on, just wanted to share the other tips. I mentioned and that's wrong. This is a little bit of a typo. So this should be, not sure how that got, but if go to wetflyswing.com/PDF 30 PDF tips is what this should be. So 30 PDF tips. And that is, I could probably actually go to that right now. And I'm going to edit that really quick if you're still on, just to make this, do this just for the heck, make sure it's 30 tips, or no, I think it's 30 tips. Let's just circle that and see if that works. Do that. I'll go over to here. Oh, get our Hangout still on there. We'll go to here. Actually, we'll go to here. There's that. You want to watch that. And then, yep, so there it is. So there's the 30 fly tying tips. And if you just click on that button right there, that'll break you over to the tips. And there's a bunch of tips on there. So yeah, one of them, and one of the tips there, I think it's number 14. I think I might need to edit it, maybe, possibly. So if it's if you are underage, do not listen to it. I make that note there. So yeah, but check it out, and if you want to check out this link, but we will go back here, and so that's fixed. It's 30 tips. And again, thank you everybody for stopping by. I'm going to sign off here, and for those that purchased, I wanted to say I appreciate it. For those that didn't purchase, I hope that maybe I can share some more tips with you down the line, and I hope that maybe I can find another resource that you will enjoy, something that you can find some value out of, and that's about it. So we are getting past the 5 o'clock hour, and I want to sign off here. And again, we will catch you soon, and stay with the Wet Fly Swing. I hope you're going to stick with us this year, because I've got a lot of fun stuff and some cool stuff to get out to. So thanks again for stopping by, everybody. We will I'll talk to you soon, and I'll see you then. Okay,